Let's take you to this story. The police ministry is facing a class action lawsuit over firearms that were smuggled from police to criminals. Families of those killed with cop-smuggled guns are demanding compensation. Now, Gun Free South Africa says families have already provided witness statements. To discuss this further, I am joined by Adele Kirsten from Gun Free SA. Adele, thank you very much for your time. Please just give us the statistics, if you have any, from Project eNCA that explains just how many people or how many families are saying that their family members died from a gun that was supposed to be in the hands of a policeman or woman.
Good afternoon, Masejo. The available records show that 261 people were shot, of whom 89 died. What Gun Free South Africa is doing is we're focusing specifically on the children. So that is people between the age of 1 and 17, and we have victims as young as 3 years old. So that number shifts slightly as we're talking about 187 people shot, of whom 63 were killed. And these are all available in court records.
And I understand that you're looking at, 2010 to 2016, and I can imagine how many families these are that are asking for compensation from government. How many exactly have you cited in your court papers, rather?
We have several families from across Cape Flats communities. At this stage, because we haven't come to certification, and most families at this point don't want to go public, but that will become public in 2 to 3 months' time when we do launch court papers at the Western Cape High Court. But we're talking about potentially, hundreds of families who were affected by the guns that were stolen by Prinsloo, moved into the Western Cape, and particularly in Cape Flats communities. So there's a direct link between these guns that were stolen and then smuggled and the death and the injury of mainly young people, and often young men, but also young girls and children as young as 3 years old.
So Prinsloo was convicted and sentenced 7 years ago, and I assume that these families feel as though that's not enough.
Well, it's not about necessarily an individual. It's really about a system that has failed people living in communities that experience high levels of gun violence. So what we have is very clear procedures, very clear protocols that our government has signed on to, global protocols and regional protocols, which stress that the state has a responsibility to manage its weapon stockpiles and to make sure that when guns are recovered, when guns are obsolete, that they don't leak back into the illicit market. And there have been inadequate regulations and inadequate management of these weapons. And so that weak system enabled someone like Prinsloo to use the loopholes to push these guns into the illicit market.
And ever since the whole Prinsloo case between 2010 and 2016 and what happened there's been people, right, Adele, who've also been killed while trying to, for instance, just deal with the matter of stolen police guns. But I want to talk about this particular system that you're talking about that has loopholes, because I understand that a police officer is at least supposed to declare if their gun has gone missing. So during this particular period, is the lawsuit that you filed in court stating that most of these guns were not really reported as guns that probably were stolen or got lost from police officers?
So, Masejo, these guns, which we call the Prinsloo guns and which were recovered through Project eNCA, these are all guns that were stolen by Prinsloo and were pushed into the Western Cape. So there are ballistics that link these guns to the deaths and injuries of the families that we are doing the class action on behalf of. So what that means is they were all guns that were being stored in the state armory ready for destruction. So some of them were police weapons. Some of them were weapons that people handed in during amnesties. Some of them were obsolete weapons. Some had been recovered from crime scenes. So they were a range of different weapons. But once the state recovers them, they are required to secure them and to make sure that they move through the subsystem to destruction. And there's a big weakness in terms of the auditing, that once the weapon was ready for destruction, there was a delay between them sitting in the armory and going for destruction. And that's something we've been advocating for, that movement to destruction is much faster, because it's recognized globally that this is one of the kind of the most at-risk moments for a weapon to move back into the illicit market. And so that's why for Gun Free South Africa, it's not about an individual officer, it's about the system. The system is broken, it's not working, people's lives have been devastated, but we're also bringing the class action because we want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And as far as we are aware, that there have not been significant improvements in the weapons and ammunition management system in SAPS. If they have strengthened it, they need to share that. But to date, we are not aware that things have significantly changed. And this will continue to happen unless SAPS acts to make sure that weapons don't move back into the illicit market.
So no political will, the fact that this is clearly a lucrative business. And I mean, we remember what happened at the Norwood police station when the movement of the ammunition there was also quite slow, and it ended up back in the streets. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Adele Kirsten from Gun Free South Africa.